Let me put my phone on Do Not Disturb, actually, so that nobody can interrupt our recording. Hi, Gina Brillon, stand-up comedian out in New York City, here with you today.
Thank you for joining me. And you're about to go on tour and coming to California later this month.
I sure am. Yeah, I'm excited.
Super exciting. A couple of interesting things. I see that you're fellow Aries. I'm April 3rd, you're April 7th. And you have a husband who's from the Midwest. Where is he from?
Right. My husband is from Indiana, which I know is arguably in the Midwest because every time I mention it to a Midwestern person, they're like, well, I mean, I guess.
I ask about him because anybody who's seen your comedy, I feel like we know you a little bit. You talk about your life.
Yeah.
Your life is your platform.
Yes, I think that in order to really like fully develop as a comedian, you really need to get into the story of your life because that's where people connect with you. That's where people really, I think, leave feeling like not just, oh, that person was funny, but they know your name. They're like, Gina was funny because I connected with the story she told about her mom or becoming a parent herself or what her culture was like. Girl, I look butt naked. I'm not naked. I'm in a shirt.
You're
But yeah,
good.
I think that's the important part is like talk about your life, but you have to get to the point where you're comfortable really talking about your life and who you are. Let me just
And
turn off my baby monitor real quick.
I love that. And I know you have a baby monitor because it's always in your stuff. Like, I love that your life, like there's this level of authenticity with what you're doing. And maybe that's why it's so relatable and you're so successful.
Oh, thank you.
What is it that made you lead toward comedy in the first place? Did you ever, like when you were a kid, did you think, oh, when I grow up, I'm going to be a stand-up comedian?
I did actually. That's so crazy.
Awesome.
Um, I knew I wanted to be a performer. Like as a kid, I loved performing for my parents. I just loved making people smile. Like it wasn't so much just performing, it was specifically making people laugh and making them smile that made me feel like I had given them a gift. Where I was like, "Oh, I made this person feel better. They smiled or even just for a minute they had this great moment where they laughed." And so I love that as a kid. And then at 14, I discovered stand up. Like I discovered actual stand up comedy. And it just changed the game because I was like, you can get paid for that? Like, I was like, what? Um, Knowing that there's a job out there that aligns with your favorite thing to do, like, which was just to make people happy. And whether that's too people pleasing in today's world of therapy, maybe. um, but part of that people pleaser in me is the person that wants to share laughter with people. Part of me is just this. I think it's the greatest thing. I think it's the most healing thing. And so I wanted to share that with people since I was a young kid. And then as I got into stand up and learned how to do it and the some of the do's and don'ts and some of the ways of staying true to yourself and what my style was, and it all kind of fell into place for me, which is like the dream of a story, because I know it doesn't for everybody, but I was such a student of comedy and I was so very well supported. Like that I think also made a difference, that my family was like, oh no, this is clearly what this kid was meant to do. Like this kid was meant to go and make people laugh. I had never had a passion for anything like I did for stand up even as a young kid. So it's been in my blood forever.
I love that. And I mean, I love comedy. I watch a comedy show every chance I get. It doesn't matter if it's local or a large scale. The thing that I really, really appreciate about your style, which makes you like my favorite, along with the marvelous Mrs. Maisel. I thought she had some
Oh,
pretty.
hi.
Did you love that show too? Or did
That's
you?
good company to be in. Okay, so here's the thing. I watched that show, but I think I watched a couple of episodes from the first season. And then as life happens, I literally just didn't watch any more of it. And I would just see clips and I would be like, oh my God, I love the show. Just based off the clips, I'd be like, I love the show. I love the story. And then I have a friend who loves the show so much. And she got me kind of back into it. And I started watching more episodes of the show and just slowly fell in love with this thing. But it really wasn't too much of a shock. I love comedy. So I knew I was going to love a comedy based show. And there's no better company than Miss Maisel to be in. So thank
Oh
you.
my gosh, I know. The thing that I love you both take on gender in really smart ways, along with other aspects of identity, race, culture, all these different things. But you're not, and sometimes there's this sort of like always reflective, it seems, authenticity that comes through and some gentle self-deprecation. But I don't see you up there making jokes necessarily at anyone's expense, except maybe your husband.
I
um,
think that was like when I first started, it was like everybody was fair game. And, I think when you're first starting out, um, there's a lot less consideration, or even looking at like what's low hanging fruit and what's not, and not just because of the way the climate has changed, but as you mature as a comic, you start to realize like, oh, those jokes were a bit easy to tell, or anybody could have said that on stage and it would have made no difference. This doesn't involve my point of view, it's just a funny thing to say. And you sort of fall out of that as you mature as a performer, and you go, well, what do I want to say on stage? What do I have to say? And I always go by, this is my always my gauge is, what do I feel about a certain thing? Do I want to take it onto the stage? Do I not care enough about it for me to bring it to the stage because I'm not having much of a reaction to it? Or is this a thing that really lights a fire in me in some way, whether it's because I hate it, I love it, I think it's ridiculous, I think it's stupid, whatever. It has to light something up in me for me to want to talk about it on stage. And I think leading with that kind of passion and how you feel about something has worked for me, because that's what people really connect to is, oh my God, that frustrates me too, or oh, I love that too, or I hate that stupid thing. You're right, I hate it, or you're wrong, I love that thing. And they still laugh. So it's a great way to connect, I think, leading with passion. And that's just one of the, I think one of the tools you need in your kit as a comic is know what you're passionate about.
Yeah, passion, and it's in my view, it's really smart comedy. I have a day job, as many people who are writers and all the other things do. And my day job is that I work in a gender equity center, and I work with
Oh,
students
wow.
sometimes who are in really tough relationships. And I've been saying like, I need a different medium to reach you. I'm saying this because I heard you say in one of your stand-up skits, like if I was doing something else, I think I'd be a relationship therapist.
Yeah.
And I get like empathy fatigue sometimes, right? Because I'm like, wait, but then I watched your stand-up thing when you were talking about, I mean, what you are doing is delivering, kind of softening and delivering, addressing what it looks like to be in an unhealthy relationship in a funny way. Um,
Yeah.
is that part of your intention?
It 100% is. I think that the way that humor is healing and the way that it's healed me from my trauma is always being able to take something that is difficult to go through and put this spin on it of, yeah, this is really hard, right? And we're going to make fun of this right now because we know deep down when we're going through a situation, we know the ins and outs of it. I knew I was in an unhealthy relationship, and even though I knew that, my trauma, my issues, my insecurities had me staying in that relationship way too long. But as soon as I was out of it and I was like, oh, I have to talk about this because how ridiculous is it that I knew I was in a bad situation and I stayed in a bad situation, and why do we do that as people? I think the overall question I always have when attacking a subject is, why though? It's very childlike. It's very much like, why? Why do we do that? Why can't we just understand these simple concepts? Why are we so divided over these things that are actually meant to divide us? We know they are. And it's like all this curiosity. And I think people react better to curiosity than accusation. And I think where a lot of comics go sort of left with it and sort of lose the beauty and the art of what we do is accusation does not promote conversation. All it does is make a person defensive and they shut down. But curiosity promotes conversation. What do you think about this? Why do you feel that way? Does that upset you? That's crazy because it doesn't upset me for these reasons. Curiosity, when you lead with that, when you go into especially heavy, heavy topics with curiosity as opposed to accusation or assumption, then I think it makes it easier for people to sit down and go, I never thought about it like that. But the second you come in with this is, and really, accusations and being that defensive about something are more tied to a person's trauma and insecurities than the issue itself. It's like, this is a very deep emotional scar for you. So I understand that it's difficult for you to separate yourself from the feeling of this. But even as a person who may have deep feelings about something, I always have to look at it and go, okay, but what would be the opposite argument of that? And can I defend it without attacking the person? Can I defend my argument? And if I can't, then I have to find that middle ground between the two of like, maybe that person has a point, so I have to look into this. And that's kind of what you want to offer as a comic. It's just a different point of view, a way that the audience can walk out and go, huh, maybe I should do my own homework and research and see if I still feel the same.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny and it's accessible, and you're making it more palatable, right? So if people say like,
Some people don't agree with making stuff more palatable, and I get that. And look, I respect everybody's style. What I think works on in the bigger picture is always making something more palatable, because if you enter into a situation like, oh, I'm gonna fight and I'm gonna make this person feel like crap and their opinion is da 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 da, without the underlying factors of understanding where the other person is coming from and why they might feel that way, then you're not really going in with a well-rounded argument. You're just going in for a fight. And it's
right,
like, no, if you want to debate this, then you have to be ready for somebody to challenge you
yes,
and for you to be able to challenge them back, but challenge them gently. You don't have to go for someone's jugular unless that's how they want to play the game. But there are a lot of comics who are like, I don't want to be palatable. And that's fine too. If you have that strong of an emotion about something, like I said, lead with that passion. For me, because I am by nature a curious person, I always go, okay, well, what are the two sides of this? Because I need to know both sides.
yeah,
Even if I think one's ridiculous, what are the two sides? And how do I attack? And this is something that I don't think a lot of people think about, but I think as I went to therapy and did my own journey, you start to realize what upsets people is because they tend we as people tend to internalize everything that comes our way and make it about us. We can be very egocentric. It's how we're almost taught to be. So and when somebody challenges what is essentially just a belief system that you as a person hold, you take it as a personal attack. And it's like, no, I'm not attacking you. I'm attacking the system that affects you, because you don't see how it affects you in a negative way, because the system maybe also benefits you versus benefiting somebody else. And so you have to be able to look at it from a well-rounded perspective. And in
yeah,
order to do that, you have to take that step back and sort of self-reflect on, am I upset because I'm internalizing this and making it about me, as opposed to about the bigger picture of what's going on? And I think that happens in a lot of heavy conversations today. Um, but
yeah.
that gets into too many conspiracy theories about society that I have.
I feel
So
you. I feel you. I'll use myself as an example as a recipient of your comedy. I found myself thinking like, oh my gosh, I want to send this clip on relationships to two boyfriends ago, about because we were a train wreck and it was so fun. And it's like, because
yeah,
you didn't know, you just keep working at it and you don't get anywhere, right? And then I think about 2 days ago, so this is where I'm leading toward a question about your husband and how he receives your comedy. A relationship ended for me because I gave the feedback to somebody that I thought it was I like humility, and I thought that he didn't need to specify that he was talented, and so it damaged, it brought up previous trauma, and the relationship is done. And there's a podcast about me out there, and so I think about, yeah, what is it like for your husband, as you do your comedy and you challenge relationships and you kind of poke fun at your own life a little bit, but in a seeming like a very caring way.
yeah. One thing, whoever that person was, screw them. You don't need to be with a person that can't have an open and honest conversation with you about how they are. Like, this was one of the things I established with my husband early on, is I'm not going to lie to you about how I receive you. Because here's the thing about perception. And this was something I talked about with a friend of mine. And we've had a lot of great talks, me and her. She's working on the next special with me. She's a writer and producer. And we had talked about this idea of perception, how we perceive ourselves versus how we want to be perceived versus how society may perceive us. There's so many different um angles to attack perception from. And when I got into a relationship with my husband, I especially realized, and this is not just with my husband, but with past relationship experience, is that people act the way they wish to be perceived at times. Where it's like, I want to be perceived as a cool person, so I'm going to act cool. I want to be perceived as this intellectual, so I'm going to act intellectual. And there's a big difference between what we put out there. And it's very rare to find a human being who is very comfortable in their own skin, comfortable enough to be themselves in every given situation with every single person. Most of us shift gears depending on who we're with because of that person's perception of us, their idea of us, or how we want to be perceived. And with this particular person, which I find it hilarious that this person was like so upset about this, that there's a podcast about it. Like, there is no more ego in that. Then I have to talk about this person that just, it, it's just so insane to me how much ego is involved in that, because I've said this the whole time. A humble person does not walk around going, yo, I'm mad humble. An intellectual doesn't walk around going, I'm super smart and super intellectual. They just are. And so if you're walking around going, I'm really humble, you're not humble. If you're walking around saying, I'm really talented, you're insecure about your talent. That doesn't tell me, as a person who would hear that you're talented. It tells me that you're insecure. One of the things when we first got together, me and my husband, was I was putting all my cards on the table and being like, I've been through enough relationship experience that I am not wasting my time here. There is no more softer version of me that you're going to meet. That, no, my days of doing that are done. I no longer give you a representative. Now I have no choice but to give you the real me, because eventually you're going to see this person. So I don't want to play nice. If you bring up something stupid at dinner for our first date, I'm going to tell you that I don't agree with what you're talking about. And if we argue, so be it.
And
Because
how did he receive that?
he was very relieved, honestly. There was a part of him that was like, because it also takes the pressure off the other person. It's like, hang up your representative for a second and let me meet the real you, because I'm giving you an option here that you probably have not been given before, because so many of us are comfortable just presenting what we think the other person wants, especially if the goal is just to hook up or just to get into that next relationship. So it's like, he was very relieved, because it was very much like, and honestly, if he wasn't, who gives a crap? Like, honestly, it was like, if he wasn't going to be like that, then you're not the person for me to be with, obviously.
You had nothing to lose. You just
Yeah.
decided, yeah.
It's just like, when you've been through the ringer in relationships and you've fought the good fight, and you've, people pleased and lied about who you were to yourself, and denied yourself what you wanted in a relationship for the sake of somebody else's happiness, because we all love to play the martyr. It's no, now it's time for me to maybe lean into my villain and be like, no, I'm sharing my life with you, just like you're sharing your life with me if we get into this together. So my question is, what do you add to my life? Because if you don't add something to my life, and I mean something, not something material, but I mean, the idea is, if I'm going to share my life with you, the one life that I get, if I'm going to share that with you, then we need to be on the same page about what we need from each other, what we can offer each other. And I'm not saying that that doesn't come up in the conversation of what do you bring to the table. I hate that conversation. But I think in any given relationship, be it friendship or be it a romantic relationship, people should add to your existence, not take away from it. People should add to it. There should be, like, for instance, with me and my husband, we are now learning the balance as parents of being like, I need you to do this for me. I have XYZ things to do. Can you just, I can't do it today. And having him be like, cool, I can do it from this to this, but then I have a thing that I got to take care of. And I'm like, great. By that time, I'm done. And it's about that kind of partnership of, I need to be able to lean on you, and I need to let you know you can lean on me in those moments. And I think that creates this great trust that we have for each other. Like, me and my husband, like, honestly, are we the perfect couple? No, obviously there is no such thing as perfection within a couplehood, but you can achieve levels of balance. And sometimes the scales tip and you course correct. But we're getting to that place of balance probably because we've always been able to sit down and go, like, I really need to talk to you about the things that I need in this relationship. And it's almost like, you know, sitting down and having an annual audit of your relationship and being like, these are the things that I now need because life is new, life is different. We have a child. This is different from the beginning of our relationship. And so a lot of it is when it comes to my material too with my husband, he always says, if it's funny, just do it. He's like, I don't even care. If it gets a laugh, just do it. And there are certain things that I think, in the past we've talked about where, like, if he felt like I stepped over a line, he's like, yeah, I was a little uncomfortable when you said that. And then I'm like, well, please tell me. I'm always like, please tell me next time. Because if there's anything I want to do is respect the people in my personal life, because there's always a way to tell a story without hurting someone or embarrassing somebody. It's your choice as the performer to embarrass the person or hurt the person. And so for me, like, there are certain things that I will never talk about my family because they are too personal and they're not for public knowledge. And there are things about my friends that I would never say, about my relationship that I would never say. There's obviously lines of respect that you don't cross, but then there's things that, dark humor is fun to play with. And so I'll play with a few like topics that are a little bit like people are like, oh, like I've had some people be like, wow, your husband doesn't get upset at you. And I'm like, no, because you act like I don't spot check with him. I'm gonna talk with him if I'm talking about him on stage and say, like, hey, I'm saying this. Is it gonna bother you if I say this?
Yeah.
And usually like 90% of the time he's like, no, but keep in mind, like, my mom will be watching. And it's like, it's little things. And I try to go by somebody's comfort level only if they're a person directly connected to me in my life, not by just anybody's feelings. Like, sorry, if you're not directly connected to me, it's very hard for me to care about your feelings. But I do my best, especially now, having learned the lessons of a comic who, even back in the day, although I would consider myself a very respectful comic in that manner, I've said things that have been pointed out as microaggressions and have been, brought to my attention, and I'll own up to it. I have no problem apologizing for it because I realized I was a different person back then. And yeah, that was a different time, but the question isn't about whether that at that time it was okay. It's whether it should have been okay in the first place
Right.
for me to say those things. And what people have trouble with is that makes them feel controlled. And I'm like, nobody's controlling me because nobody can actually stop the words from coming out of my mouth. I just have to be ready for those consequences. And because I'm a naturally curious person, I don't look at the climate we live in now as something to be scared of, but more of something to be like, how can I play with this?
There's
And how
so
can I
much to
have
play with, right
fun
in
with
this moment.
this?
Yes.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the questions I would get, I know I'm going long on this tangent, but
It's okay. It's important stuff.
all about the industry in general is that, like, people would be like, are you afraid to piss people off in the industry with what you're saying? And I'm like, no. Like, why piss them off? How? Like, what they're gonna stomp their feet, get mad at me, protest, write some hate mail? What do you want me to it's gonna happen regardless. It's going to happen regardless. And I'm not even the person coming in punching you in the face with my own personal beliefs or my own personal feelings. I'm just asking the question, why? I'm just pointing out what I'm noticing. And if you get mad at that, well, then I can't help you
Yes.
because that I can't fix. I can't fix you being mad at just the question or the challenge of maybe we should think differently. Um, because now even I'm diving into those heavy topics even more now with my son and more stuff that I'm getting into on stage now, but still in that very curious way. And I think that that is something that a lot of people miss is the curiosity. Curiosity has gone. We all think we're right all the time. And I think that just kind of kills it for me. And one of the benefits, circling back to my wonderful husband, is my husband is a fan of comedy. And so we can sit and talk about, and I'm a comedy nerd. So we can sit and talk about comedy for hours. We can watch comedy specials together. Like he'll start pointing out technical things that I'll be like, that, he's learned through our conversations. And it makes it a lot easier for us to connect and a lot easier for him to understand my world.
And quick logistical question, how old is your son?
He's 2.5.
2.5. Oh, that's tough. My kids are 8 and 11. So there's a whole new set of challenges down the road that you'll encounter later. But I know
Oh, I know.
you're in a whole bunch right now with a toddler, right?
Oh yeah, there's a whole bunch, but it's so interesting. I love watching him come into his own. It's fascinating, and I try not to push him in either direction. If he's feeling shy, I allow him to just be. And it's weird to say I allow him, but I feel like the reason why that language is necessary is because so many parents don't allow. So many parents step in and force, their kid to be social and force this and force that. And I go, if he doesn't feel social right now, fine. We'll try again in a couple of minutes. We'll see if he wants to say hi to anybody. So that way it's not like I'm just giving into it and being like, stay scared, people are awful. But I want him to have his own way of attacking it and not be that parent that's like, no, you have to say hi to everybody and you have to hug everybody. It's like, no, no, if he doesn't feel like hugging you, he does not have to hug you. And if he feels like giving you a hug later, he'll give you a hug later. That's fine.
You're
I'm a
setting him
hugger.
up to understand consent and coercion already at the age of 2. Look at that.
Yeah, we have little songs that we sing about consent. Like I sing songs to him about consent so that he understands. And it's like little simple songs where it's like, his nickname is Bubs. So I will sing to him. I'll be like, if you want to kiss the bubs, ask permission.
I love it.
And he'll sing it with me. And I'm like, and if the bub says no, you have to let it go because no one should touch your body without permission. And it's like just teaching him those little things to sing to himself and to understand. Like, if he understands, the idea is if he understands consent for himself, he can understand it in other people when somebody else is like, and he does a good job of like, there's times when he'll like, grab my pinky and he'll like squeeze it and I'll be like, I don't like being touched like that, please don't touch my body like that. And he'll go like this and he'll just be like, okay, and he'll just like leave it alone.
Oh, he's got it. Yeah,
So he's like slowly understanding, like, if you say no, I have to respect that, so you have to respect my no too.
this is beautiful. I have to tell you, I'm very happy that you do the work that you do as a comic, because I think you can reach a lot more people than you'd reach if you were a relationship therapist. And I think you kind of offer, I think you can offer people some opportunity to reflect on their own relationships and their dynamics through your comedy. And what a gift.
That's definitely the goal, because I think what often happens in relationships and why we seek outside counsel in the first place is because you're so close to the fire, you really cannot see how you are impacting someone else. You only see how they impact you. It's very difficult for any of us in any given relationship to step back and go, okay, but how do my actions impact this individual? And I think in order to kind of be in a healthy place with your partner, you don't want to try to do everything with just each other. There are times when you do need an outside party to be like, okay, but do you understand how that could be taken this way? You don't have to feel that way, and that maybe wasn't your intention. And this is where the discussion of intent versus impact comes in, where it's like, no, did homeboy doing a podcast about y'all's breakup intend to be a douche? No, but the impact was complete douchebaggery because that was something that didn't need to be discussed. So it's like you make these active choices without thinking of the impact it may have on the other person. When you start to take the step back and you start to realize, even when it comes down to love languages, even when it comes down to somebody being like, this is how I receive love, this is how I give love, and understanding that about your partner. And even if people think it's woo woo, just try it. Just try it and see how it impacts every relationship, because it will impact every relationship. And I think there is always a chance for us to be better people to one another, but you really have to want to do the work, and you really have to be so painfully self-aware. And self-awareness is a painful process. And one of the goals I think that I've had recently and even throughout my comedy career is I'm going to slowly but surely show you the steps that I took to get me to a level of self-awareness where if somebody does call me out for something in my comedy, I can step back and reflect and not automatically get defensive, but step back and go, what did I say? How did I say it? How did I mean it? How did it impact people? And really, once you start doing that, it changes how you handle just about everything that comes your way. Nothing seems as catastrophic. Nothing seems as detrimental or life ending. You know, you still have your feelings about it, you still have emotional reaction to it, but it's not like I feel like, oh my, the world is falling apart, because I'm taking the step back and going, okay, there's clearly a solution somewhere. I just need to figure out what parts were mine, what parts were somebody else's, and what I'm in control with. And I think that's a thing when they talk about like experience bringing you to wisdom. I think that that's such a true thing. I don't believe the adage that age equals wisdom, because I've met a lot of dumbass older people. Experience, however, lived experience can change the game.
That's beautiful. And I realize our time is going away very quickly, or probably already has, so I'll try to be as succinct as possible. With these last few questions, I could talk to you till tomorrow if you have the time, and I do. But
I could too. This is a great interview.
it's been so fun. So you talked about teaching how teaching your son about getting permission to touch, right? And
Yeah.
I was thinking about that and how we're trying to teach permission around consent and when can we do something and when we can't. At the same time, I feel like women are really taught, and this also happened for me where I was given the feedback. I needed to have asked permission to give this feedback.
Mhm.
Women tend to there's an expectation that we need to get permission or to be who we are. I feel like you've reached a place where you're unapologetic with who you are. Thoughtful, but unapologetic. Would you say that's fair?
I
And how
would
did
say
you get
that's
there?
fair. Yeah, I would say that that's kind of where I'm at now, is that place of like, no, I'm comfortable in my skin, and I'm also comfortable in the fact that I will change, that I will grow. Change and growth are a constant process that I think a lot of people are afraid of and want to stop. I'm not the same person I was a couple of years ago, but the person I am now, I'm proud to walk in that. Even if she needs some self-correction, even if she needs to work on a couple of things still. And the person I'll be in 5 years will probably look back at this person and be like, yeah, I'm nothing like her anymore. But the person I will be then, I will walk with power and with pride in that person, who that person is. I think that's an important thing, when you get into the therapy talk and you're like, you need to love all parts of yourself, and you need to realize that there are different parts of you, and that those different parts of you will go through changes as you grow. Even your physical body every 7 years changes. So change is just this inevitable thing that we have to accept. And I think it's been a beautiful road for me that's brought me to this place of being like, no, I am who I am, even if she's flawed.
That's beautiful. I'm gonna have to go dig into the every 7 years our body is changing thing. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I learned it from
Yeah,
Gina.
it's like there's a couple of videos on there on it, and you can look up some articles about how every 7 years you'll have new allergies, you'll have a new food that you love, or like let's say all of a sudden you can eat dairy when you could never eat dairy before. Like your body changes every 7 years. Like literally every cell kind of regenerates. So it's like you're not the same person from 7 years ago, which is wild when you think about it. On a physiological level, your molecules are literally not the same.
That's crazy. Maybe this is why 7 is my favorite number. Who knows?
Oh, yes.
And lastly, or second to lastly, if you had to, in this moment, reflect back on the most important lesson that's gotten you to the place that you're in today, what would that be?
Oh,
Just that little question.
oh my goodness. It would be something my mom taught me. And this is since I was a kid. And it's something that I always come back to. And it's about listening. Um, she would always tell me in a very gangster Bronx mom kind of way, keep your mouth shut and keep your eyes and ears open. And what she was saying was speak less, listen more, observe more, because you're going to learn more. People are so quick to speak before they fully observed a situation because they're just so eager to get their words out or their point of view out or to be heard. And it's like if you would have just taken a moment to just listen and really listen, be present, focus, because I'm definitely the type of person whose mind can just disappear in the middle of a conversation. And so I've really, really been working on being present in conversations. But that advice from my mother is something that I always go back to. Like, are you listening? Are you really listening?
That's beautiful. And when people leave your show, in addition to having to have laughed, what else do you want them to leave with?
I would love them to leave with a better understanding of humanity in general and how you can connect with a, Puerto Rican woman who grew up in the South Bronx, a mom, a married woman. You can connect with me even if you're a single person with no kids, with no desire to have kids. Because even if you're listening to my comedy, you might go, oh my God, I experienced that in my childhood. Or, oh, I wish my mom was like that because I would have been dope. Or my mom is exactly like that. I love that. You don't have to be in my position to connect with my feelings or thoughts on given situations. You just need to kind of get out of your own way, because I think a lot of people would go, oh, she's Puerto Rican, I can't connect with that. She's a mom, I can't connect with that. Get out of your own way and get out of your own head, because you're missing a lot of great comedy by making assumptions that you can't connect with a person. Just give it a try and you'll see some amazing things.
I love it. And if people want a preview of your work or they just want to follow where you're at, give us all your socials and let us know how we can follow you.
Oh, yes, please do keep up with me, because I have things coming down the pipeline and I always have stuff, that I'm posting or working on. Follow me on Instagram at G Brillon, TikTok at Gina Brillon, and you can check out my tour dates at ginabrillon.com.
Thank you so much for hanging out with me for the past chunk of time. It's been amazing.
Thank you for having me. Great questions and a great interview. So thank you.
Can't wait to see you when you're in California.
Amazing. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, take good care.
Take care.